The hushed anticipation of the auction house backroom before a record sale was a stark contrast to the usual cacophony of my world. I preferred the quiet, the sterile precision of my lab, but even I occasionally indulged in the as-the-tick pursuits of the living. Tonight, it was a first edition, a architectural treatise, bound in Moroccan Leather, estimated to break records. I stood beside a velvet rope, a mere observer, feeling the weighty silence punctuated only by the soft rustle of catalog pages, and the occasional whispered valuation from the serious collectors clustered near the viewing tables. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and the faint metallic tang of money about to change hands. My phone, set to vibrate, buzzed against my hip. I excused myself from the periphery of a discussion about provenance, stepping deeper into the shadows of stacked, crated artworks. The caller ID displayed the lead detective's name. A call from me at this hour usually meant only one thing. Something had gone terribly wrong, and the dead were calling. Anderson, I answered, my voice a low murmur against the backdrop of an impending fortune. Reed, it's the detective. You're needed. Elias Thorne. His voice was terse, clipped, a telltale sign of a case that already had its hooks in him. My brow furrowed. Elias Thorne. The name was synonymous with innovation, with structures that defied conventional wisdom, with the kind of sealed, self-sustaining environments that bordered on science fiction. Single gunshot, his own design, his own weapon. But it's Thorne, Reed. And his house. It's a fortress. We've had to cut through a wall panel to get in. Looks like he made sure no one could stop him. A fortress. Impenetrable. Suicide. The words didn't align in my mind. Elias Thorne, the man who built for eternity, suddenly deciding to end his own? It felt off. I glanced back at the hushed backroom, the glow of antique lamps illuminating masterpieces. The treatise, no doubt, would find a new home tonight. I, however, was already being called to a know-the-R kind of unveiling. "Send me the coordinates," I instructed, pulling my coat tighter. "I'm on my way." The drive across the city was a blur of streetlights and the rhythmic hum of the engine. My mind, usually a quiet repository of anatomical facts and pathological patterns, was already piecing together the scant details. Elias Thorne's residence wasn't just a house. It was an extension of my genius, a testament to my obsession with security and control. To enter it, even for me, felt like breaching a vault. When I finally arrived, the scene was exactly as I'd anticipated. A swarm of flashing blue and red lights painting the night, illuminating the brutalist lines of Thorne's domicile. It was a monolithic structure of polished concrete and reinforced glass, nestled discreetly on a sprawling, manicured estate. The sheer scale of it, even in death, commanded respect. A section of one wall, near what I presumed was a service entrance, had been neatly excised, revealing a nest of optical fibers and steel mesh. The detective hadn't been exaggerating. The lead detective, a man whose weary eyes had seen too much, met me at the perimeter. "Reed, thanks for coming." He gestured towards the gaping hole. Took us 2 hours to get past the outer layers, the RML imaging, sonic resonance, the works. He designed it to keep everything out, everyone. Including himself, it seems, stepping past the uniformed officers. The AIR inside the breach was cool, sterile. It smelled faintly of ozone, and fresh-cut metal. "That's the assumption," the detective conceded, his voice betraying a hint of his own unease. His in his main study, integrated with the central control system, apparently. Locked himself in the RE, too. We had to override multiple biometric and voice locks. Everything was activated. Every single security protocol. I nodded, my gaze sweeping over the intricate wiring exposed by the breach. This wasn't just a house. It was a sealed ecosystem. My internal compass, usually reliable, began to spin with a subtle disquiet. An architect of Thorne's caliber, with my meticulous nature, my obsession with perfection, would orchestrate my own demise with almost artistic precision. But the very perfection of it, the sheer, almost theatrical effort to ensure no one could intervene, struck me as too perfect. The interior of the home was a minimalist marvel, by the D in soft, indirect lighting from unseen sources. The re was an eerie quiet, a profound stillness that seemed to swallow sound. We reached the study. The door, a thick slab of what looked like reinforced alloy, stood ajar, evidence of the forced entry. Elias Thorne sat slumped in a high-backed ergonomic chair, facing a wall of monitors displaying complex architectural schematics. A single, small-caliber pistol lay on the polished concrete floor beside his outstretched hand. The AIR in the room was still, undisturbed, carrying a faint, acrid scent of gunpowder that seemed to cling to the expensive furnishings. No sign of struggle, no overturned furniture, no forced entry from the inside. It was a tableau of absolute finality, a meticulously arranged suicide. I knelt beside the body, my gaze sweeping over Thorne's features. His face was devoid of expression, a mask of ultimate peace or ultimate despair. My eyes, trained to dissect and interpret the minutiae of death, absorbed every detail, the precise angle of my head, the way my fingers rested, the undisturbed papers on the desk. The detective watched me, my expression unreadable. "Textbook, isn't it?" he offered, a question more than a statement. I didn't answer immediately. My gloved fingers hovered an inch above the skin of Thorne's wrist, my eyes tracing the delicate network of veins. The scene presented itself as an open and shut case, a man driven to my final solitary ACT. Yet something prickled the back of my mind. The impeccable scene. Too impeccable, perhaps. My instincts, honed over years of sifting through the chaos of human tragedy, suggested that perfection often concealed the most intricate deceptions. I leaned closer, my breath held, searching for the crack in the flawless facade. The sterile air of the examination facility bit into my exposed skin, a stark contrast to the humid, electrically charged atmosphere of Thorne's smart home. My internal compass, which had been spinning with disquiet now settled on a single, unwavering point: suspicion. Elias Thorne, the architect of impenetrable spaces, had not simply ended my own life. The subtle anomalies I'd observed at my residence, the almost too perfect scene, whispered of a deeper orchestration. My assistant, a meticulous technician, stood ready with the initial reports. The room itself, a converted section of an old industrial warehouse, hummed with the low thrum of ventilation systems and the precise glow of overhead surgical lights. It was a place of cold, hard facts, where every fiber and fluid told a story. Before I began the primary incision, my mind drifted back, not to the smart home, but to an earlier call that day. An investigator, a sharp-eyed woman with an unnerving ability to sift through corporate dross, had pulled me into a periphery case, one she'd hinted might intersect with Thorne's world. It had led me to a auction house backroom before a record sale. Pallets of rare books, antique furniture were meticulously arranged under the watchful eyes of security personnel. The investigator had pointed to a custom-built, heavily encrypted data storage unit, tucked away amidst a lot of obscure industrial prototypes, far from the high-value items Thorne usually collected. It was a device I recognized, having seen schematics of Thorne's proprietary server designs. Its presence, detached from his personal effects, was a jarring note in the symphony of his meticulously curated life. The curator, a nervous man with perpetually damp hands, had stammered about a last-minute consignment, a misplaced item from a recent acquisition. I'd noted the faint scorch marks on one corner of the unit, almost imperceptible, as if someone had tried to force it open with extreme heat. It hadn't seemed directly related to Thorne's apparent suicide, the N, but it had certainly a DD to know the R layer to the enigma surrounding me. It was a detail I'd filed away, a crack in the facade of my carefully constructed public image. Apparent method of death. Self-inflicted, high-velocity projectile wound to the head. I nodded, my gaze fixed on Thorne's form. His skin, usually tanned and vibrant, was now a pallid canvas. I began my external examination, my gloved fingers moving with practiced precision over the contours of my body. The entry wound was clean, almost surgical, leaving little peripheral damage. My eyes scanned for defensive wounds, for anigh abrasions or contusions that might suggest a struggle, however brief. The re were none. Not even a single broken nail or a scraped knuckle. For a man supposedly taking his own life, the absence of a NY involuntary flinching or desperate, last-second resistance felt unnatural. The internal examination began. The scalpel made its precise incision, revealing the layers beneath. As I worked, a subtle, almost imperceptible detail caught my attention. Beneath the superficial tissues, in the deeper musculature of the upper torso, and neck, I detected minute, almost microscopic hemorrhages. They weren't indicative of blunt force trauma, nor were they wide typical of postmortem changes. They were too diffuse, too scattered, like tiny bursts of pressure from within, not without. The initial toxicology report showed no common depressants or stimulants. Yet, a deeper analysis of the cellular respiration markers indicated an unusual state of heightened metabolic activity just prior to death. It was as if his body had been preparing for a physical exertion that never occurred, or had been forced into an accelerated state by an unknown agent. The adrenal glands, in particular, showed signs of recent significant output, a surge of fight-or-flight hormones. But fight or flight from what? The re was no corresponding physical evidence. No frantic movements, no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds. The AB sense of expected indicators for the AP parent method of death continued to mount. The bone around the entry wound, while fractured as expected, lacked the characteristic radiating stress patterns I would anticipate from a projectile of that caliber. It was almost as if the bone had been pre-weakened, or the force applied in a way that bypassed the usual kinetic transfer. My mind raced, connecting the dots. The microscopic hemorrhages, the unusual metabolic state, the adrenal surge without physical struggle, the peculiar bone trauma, and that scorch-marked data unit in the uction house back room. Elias Thorne's death was a meticulously constructed illusion. The cracks in the facade were no longer subtle. This wasn't suicide. This was something far more intricate, far more sinister. It was as if Thorne's cells had been forced into an unsustainable overdrive, burning out from within, yet without a NI external, accelerant detectable by standard means. The sheer contradiction gnawed at me. My mind kept returning to the impossible entry, the hermetically sealed home, and now this. A physiological state that defied conventional explanation. I found myself in the most improbable of temporary labs, the auction house back room before a record sale. The air, usually thick with the scent of antique polish and hushed in anticipation, now carried the faint, sterile tang of reagents, and the low hum of my portable spectroscopic analyzer. Around me, priceless canvases leaned against crates, the IR protective coverings a stark contrast to the gleaming steel of my equipment. The general manager, a nervous man with meticulously slicked back hair, had initially balked at my request, but a quiet word from a senior investigator about national security implications had cleared the space. Discretion was paramount. Anything, Reed? The voice belonged to a lead technician, a woman named Lena, her face illuminated by the green glow of a microscopic slide. He was hunched over a high-resolution electron microscope, her fingers deftly manipulating the controls. Her usual precision was sharpened by a palpable tension. I leaned closer to my own screen, a spectral graph rippling across the display, still correlating the mitochondrial activity spikes with the cellular damage. It's too uniform, Lena. A marble bust stared blankly from a velvet-draped pedestal, its cold gaze seemingly fixed on our unusual operations. The hushed reverence usually accorded to the SE objects was replaced by the focused intensity of our work. The impending record sale felt like a distant, irrelevant hum against the immediate, pressing reality of Elias Thorne's death. Lena grunted, her eyes still glued to the eyepiece. I'm seeing something. A residue. Not on the surface of the cells, but integrated. Like it's part of the cellular structure, but a lean. Alien how? I pushed, my voice low, too ordered, like a nano-assembly. Look. She gestured, and I moved to her side, peering into the eyepiece. What I saw made the hairs on my ARMS prickle. Embedded within the mitochondria, structures too small to be viral, too complex to be simple protein aggregates, shimmered with an unnatural regularity. They were microscopic lattices, intricate and precise, almost crystalline in the IRA arrangement. They pulsed with an internal, faint luminescence under specific light frequencies. Run a full elemental analysis, I instructed, my voice tight. A&D cross-reference with known biological markers, syn the tick polymers, a knithing in our database. The technician nodded, her fingers flying across the input panel. The hum of the analyzer intensified, its internal mechanisms whirring as it performed its complex task. A faint scent of ozone now mingled with the old wood and polish. Minutes stretched into an eternity. I paced the small, clear area we had cordoned off, my gaze sweeping over the velvet ropes, and the covered sculptures. Each object, a testament to human ingenuity, and artistry, seemed to mock the invisible, insidious ingenuity we were now confronting. How could such a thing enter Thorne's body without a trace? How could it cause such devastation? Finally, the screen on the electron microscope flickered, displaying a complex molecular diagram. Lena let out a sharp gasp. Reed, you need to see this. I was by her side in an instant. The elemental analysis wasn't matching a knithing in our extensive biological or chemical libraries. It was a unique signature, a complex macromolecule with syn the tick components, unlike a knithing I had ever encountered. It had a crystalline core, almost diamond-like in its carbon structure, surrounded by an intricate web of what appeared to be biologically derived CID chains, not a random toxin. This is engineered to hijack cellular respiration, to force it into hyperdrive until it burns itself out. The specific binding sites, Lena adiered, pointing to a highlighted section of the diagram. It's targeting the electron transport chain, specifically the cytochrome oxidase complex. It's like a microscopic, super-efficient battery drainer, but for cells. The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just murder. It was a NACT of profound, almost impossible precision. The biosignature was so small, so perfectly integrated, that standard toxicology would never pick it up. It was designed to mimic natural cellular breakdown, leaving no obvious foreign agent. It confirmed my earlier suspicions about the heightened metabolic activity. Thorne's cells hadn't just been in overdrive. The Y had been forced into it by something invisible, something utterly syn the tick. This explains the lack of external trauma, the AB sense of a struggle, my mind racing. It explains why my smart home showed no breach. The weapon wasn't a bullet or a blade. It was this. I tapped the screen, my finger hovering over the intricate molecular structure. This invisible threat. But the biggest question remained, glaring and terrifying. How was it delivered? How did something so minute, yet so devastating, bypass the security of Thorne's impenetrable home, and my own body's defenses, leaving no discernible entry wound or trace evidence? The how was baffling, pointing not just to an advanced weapon, but to a method of deployment that was beyond anything I had ever conceived. The precision, the stealth, the sheer audacity of it, AL suggested a killer who wasn't just smart, but operating on a level of technological advancement that bordered on the unfathomable. Priceless porcelain vases, still draped in protective cloth, stood sentinel against temporary folding tables laden with crime scene photos, and lukewarm coffee cups. Fluorescent lights, buzzing overhead, cast a sickly yellow glow on the faces gathered around the makeshift conference. This was the command center for now, a testament to the speed with which the city's resources had been mobilized following Elias Thorne's death. The detective leading the investigation, a man whose square jaw and tired eyes bespoke years of sifting through conventional human depravity, tapped a stylus against a tablet displaying a meticulously charted timeline of Thorne's last known movements. "We've got a clear picture," he announced, his voice gravelly, cutting through the low murmur of the room. Thorne was under considerable financial pressure. His latest project, the Nexus Tower, was bleeding money, and his firm was facing a hostile takeover bid from a competitor. He'd just lost a major legal battle too, against a former business partner. Motive plain as day for a man driven to the edge. He gestured to a series of photographs depicting Thorne's study, pristine and undisturbed. No forced entry. Security logs show no breaches. His own system recorded his final moments. Everything points to self-infliction. The pressure, the isolation. He trailed off, letting the unspoken conclusion hang heavy. I felt a familiar knot tighten in my stomach. "With respect, detective," I began, my voice, I hoped, steady. "The evidence doesn't fully align with a suicide." He turned, my gaze sharp, expectant. ODR colleagues, forensic analysts, A&D investigators shifted in the ire seats, the ire to tension now on me. I could feel the ire skepticism before I even opened my mouth for the R. They wanted a tidy narrative, something the Y could file in and move on from. My examination of Thorne's cellular structure revealed a highly unusual biosignature. I continued, projecting images onto a large screen with a click of my own tablet. Microscopic views of disrupted cellular membranes filled the display, a lean and unsettling. It's a compound I've never encountered, extremely potent. No injection marks, no dermal abrasion, nothing inhaled? Nothing visible, I confirmed, feeling the frustration begin to prickle. No entry wound, no puncture, no residue on the skin or within the respiratory system that would indicate a traditional delivery mechanism. So, what are we saying, Anderson? He absorbed it through osmosis? It materialized inside him? We're looking for a killer who can walk through walls, and conjure poison? His tone was dismissive, bordering on condescending. I'm saying the delivery method is sophisticated beyond anything we've encountered, I countered, trying to keep my voice even. The biosignature is unique. It's a designer agent, engineered. And the A-B sense of a conventional entry point suggests an equally advanced, perhaps even novel method of introduction. We're not dealing with a syringe or a gas canister here. I pulled up a schematic of Thorne's smart home, overlaying it with my own findings. His security system was, as you said, impenetrable to conventional means. Yet, this agent was delivered. The only conclusion I can draw is that the method exploits a vulnerability in the fabric of what we consider physical reality. Or it operates on a scale so minute it simply bypasses a existing detection. Silence followed, thick and uncomfortable. The detective stared at the screen, the NAT me, a muscle twitching in my jaw. And this impossible entry point. You're suggesting it's a form of ghost entry? The mechanism of delivery leaves no conventional trace. No residue, no impact site, no energy signature that our current forensics can detect. The killer hadn't just used advanced technology. The Y had weaponized the A-B sense of it. They had crafted a murder so precise, so clean, that it defied the very principles upon which forensic science was built. My colleagues were looking for a hammer and chisel, and I was describing something that moved through solid objects like smoke, leaving no shesh. The detective shook his head slowly. Anderson, we need something tangible. We have 3 potential suspects with clear motives and opportunities to have poisoned me if I'd found a way inside. We can't chase phantoms. His words, meant to ground me, only amplified my growing isolation. The mystery had deepened, not just in its complexity, but in its very nature, pushing beyond the limits of my training, beyond the limits of our understanding. The silence of my laboratory, usually a sanctuary of focused thought, now felt like an echo chamber for my own doubts. The lead detective's words, a dull thud of conventional wisdom, still resonated. They were pursuing a human killer, a tangible threat, while I was left grappling with an assailant who seemed to exist in the quantum foam between one reality A and the R. The microscopic anomalies, the unique biosignature, the impossible entry. The YAL pointed to something beyond the reach of standard procedure, something that demanded a different kind of investigation. My colleagues were stuck in the known, but the killer had stepped into the unseen. I knew, with a certainty that gnawed at me, that if I was to make a NOI progress, I had to pivot. Elias Thorne hadn't just been a renowned architect. He was a mind that pushed boundaries. The method of his demise wasn't an isolated event. It was a consequence, a reaction to some grander design. The killer hadn't just silenced a man. The why had silenced a secret. My focus had to shift from how Thorne died to why he died, specifically. What cutting-edge project he might have been working on that could invite such a sophisticated, almost spectral form of attack. My search led me to an unlikely place. An auction house back room before a record sale. Thorne, I'd learned, had a penchant for collecting rare architectural blueprints and models, often storing the in secure, climate-controlled units managed by high-end auctioneers for discretion and future liquidation. I'd pulled strings, leveraging my credentials and the urgency of the investigation to gain a CSS, rows of crated ART, antique furniture shrouded in white sheets, and glass display cases holding glittering jewelry lined the narrow passageways. The low hum of unseen ventilation units was the only constant sound. He held a tablet, my finger hovering over a digital signature pad. Reed Anderson, I presume? His voice was low, professional, betraying no hint of curiosity, only efficiency. Your clearance has been verified. Thorne's private collection, Unit 7B, is through here. We had it prepped for a private viewing next week. The estate's instructions were clear. Immediate access for your inquiry. He unlocked the door with a series of precise keycard swipes and a biometric scan, the heavy mechanism groaning in protest. Thank you. Stepping past me into a smaller, brightly lit room, stark in its utilitarian design. It was less a storage unit and more a fortified study. A single, heavy oak table dominated the center, flanked by 2 ergonomic chairs. On the table lay several sealed, transparent containers, each holding what looked like intricate architectural models. Along one wall, shelves were filled with Lee the R-bound portfolios, digital storage devices in secure casings, ANDA single high-resolution monitor connected to a docking station. This was Thorne's inner sanctum, a place where he likely worked on projects too sensitive for my public office. I started with the digital devices. The security manager hovered near the door, a silent sentinel. I powered up the monitor, inserting a small, encrypted drive I'd brought from Thorne's smart home. A drive I'd painstakingly recovered from a hidden compartment, one the initial sweep had missed. It contained a fragmented digital key, a piece of a puzzle I hoped would unlock Thorne's secrets. After several attempts, the screen flickered, displaying a directory tree, most of it encrypted. But one folder, labeled Project Chimera, was accessible. Thorne had evidently left it open, perhaps in a rush, or as a deliberate breadcrumb. My fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating through schematics and design documents. What I found was breathtaking, and terrifying. It wasn't a building. It was an ecosystem. Thorne had been developing a revolutionary AI-controlled environmental system, not for a sustainable city block, but for something far more ambitious. The schematics detailed atmospheric processors capable of generating specific molecular compounds on demand, micro-drones designed for precise dispersal of the SE compounds, AND sensors that could analyze biosignatures ATAN incredibly granular level. The level of control, the ability to generate AND disperse specific bioactive agents with such precision, the capacity to monitor A and analyze unique molecular markers in a N environment. It all clicked into place with a sickening finality. The unique biosignature I'd found on Thorne's body wasn't a NA anomaly. It was a product. A tailored molecular compound, perhaps designed to induce rapid cellular decay or incapacitation, delivered with surgical precision. AND the impossible entry point? If microdrones could disperse the SE compounds, the Y could also, theoretically, create a microscopic breach in a supposedly impenetrable barrier, delivering the IR payload A and the N dissolving or retreating, leaving no trace. The system was designed to manipulate the very A-IR a person breathed the D, to craft AN environment that could kill with silent, invisible efficiency. My hands clenched, knuckles white against the cool metal of the docking station. This wasn't corporate espionage over blueprints or design patents. This was about weaponizing the environment itself. About a technology that could turn the A-IR around you into a silent assassin. The tension in the room, previously a low hum, now felt like a taut wire stretched to breaking point. The killer wasn't just advanced. The Y were leveraging Thorne's own genius against me, using my creation to commit my murder. The mystery hadn't just deepened. It had transformed into something far more dangerous. A race against an invisible enemy who wielded a power I was only just beginning to comprehend. A priceless porcelain vase sat under a dust sheet on a pedestal, its presence an absurd counterpoint to the high-tech forensic instruments now humming on a makeshift workbench. My determination was a knot in my stomach, a constant reminder of Elias Thorne and the impossible circumstances of my death. A colleague, hunched over a monitor, shook her head, her brow furrowed in concentration. The screen displayed a complex chromatogram, peaks and valleys telling a story of molecular breakdown that was proving frustratingly elusive. "It's almost too efficient, Reed," she replied, her gaze fixed on the data. The markers were tracking. They are vanishing within minutes of exposure. Whatever this agent is, it doesn't want to be found. My eyes drifted to the advanced microscopy station, where a microscopy specialist meticulously adjusted the focus on a slide. He was working with samples taken from Thorne's pulmonary tissue, painstakingly prepared after the initial misleading findings. The environmental system in Thorne's home, I now understood, wasn't just a delivery mechanism. It was a sophisticated concealment system designed to eliminate its own tracks. "Keep pushing it," I urged, moving closer to the microscope. "We know it was the Re. We saw the subtle cellular disruption, the unique biosignature that the A-utimated systems missed. It's just playing hide and seek on a molecular level." The microscopy specialist, a man with the patience of a saint and eyes sharper than an NY lens, finally spoke. "Reed, I think I have something." His voice held a tremor of excitement, a rare sound from such a stoic individual. I leaned in, my breath catching. On the monitor, magnified thousands of times, was an image unlike a nigh thing I'd ever seen. It wasn't a bacterium, not a virus, nor a typical chemical compound. It was a complex, multi-layered structure, almost crystalline in its precision, yet organic in its composition. Tiny, almost imperceptible filaments extended from a central core, like microscopic tendrils. "Enhance the contrast," I commanded, my heart rate quickening. The specialist complied, and the image sharpened, revealing intricate details. What a those filaments. They look designed. "They're molecular binding sites, I believe," the specialist murmured, adjusting the fine focus knob again. "And the core. It's a protein matrix, but engineered. I'm seeing amino CID sequences that don't occur naturally in this combination. This was it, the reveal. A bioagent, I bray the D, the words tasting like a she. Not a conventional toxin, not a pathogen, something constructed. The colleague AT, the mass spectrometer, spun around, her eyes wide. Constructed? That explains why our standard panels were coming up clean. It's custom made. Precisely, I confirmed, a grim satisfaction settling over me. In the way it breaks down. Those binding sites. They're designed to attach to specific cellular receptors, deliver the IR payload, the N rapidly degrade, leaving behind only inert common organic compounds, mimicking natural cellular senescence or breakdown. The lead toxicologist, a woman who usually maintained a calm demeanor even in the face of the most gruesome findings, now looked visibly shaken. That level of precision, it's targeted. It wouldn't just affect a neuron. It would be designed for a specific individual or a specific genetic profile. Thorn, I concluded, the pieces falling into place with a chilling clarity. His unique biosignature, the one the environmental system was monitoring. It wasn't just tracking him, it was tracking the target for this agent. The system identified his molecular markers. The N dispersed this compound with incredible precision, calibrated to his specific physiology. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a NA assassination. It was a NACT of weaponized biotechnology, delivered with surgical accuracy. The initial AEP parent suicide was a masterful deception, a carefully orchestrated outcome designed to erase AL traces of the true cause. We need to identify the exact mechanism of uction, I pressed, turning to the toxicologist. How does it kill? What natural cause does it mimic? She nodded, already pulling up new data streams. Based on the cellular damage we've observed, AN the rapid onset, I'm hypothesizing it targets the autonomic nervous system, or perhaps cellular respiration pathways. Something that causes a sudden catastrophic system failure, indistinguishable from a heart attack or a massive stroke in the immediate aftermath. It's aerosolized, I added, picturing the subtle vents in Thorne's smart home. A fine mist, undetectable to the naked eye, dispersed only when the target's unique markers were confirmed within the specific zone. Invisible, untraceable, AN designed to vanish. The tension in the backroom was palpable, a heavy cloak woven from the enormity of our discovery. We had found the weapon, but in doing so, we had also unveiled a killer operating on a terrifying new frontier. This wasn't just corporate espionage. This was a declaration of intent, a demonstration of power that transcended conventional warfare. We were no longer chasing a simple murderer. We were hunting a ghost, armed with a weapon that redefined stealth and lethality. The record sale was hours away, and the weight of what we knew pressed down on me, heavier than a NYA antique in the room. This wasn't just a case. It was a warning. The tension in the back room was palpable, a heavy cloak woven from the enormity of our discovery. This wasn't just corporate espionage. This was a declaration of intent, a demonstration of, well, that was what we were trying to figure out. The auction house back room before a record sale felt like a strange temporary command center. Around me, the usual chaos of an impending auction was muted, a low thrumming bass line against the sharp, focused hum of the improvised server racks. Priceless artifacts, still crated or draped in protective sheeting, stood sentinel against the walls, silent witnesses to our grim endeavor. We had commandeered the space, deemed it secure enough for the sensitive data we were about to dissect, away from prying eyes in the usual protocols of a formal investigative headquarters. I watched the lead digital forensics specialist, a young woman with a fierce concentration etched onto her face, as her fingers danced across, a holographic keyboard projected onto the worn wooden table. The RA naylists, the IR faces illuminated by the glow of multiple monitors, murmured in a language of code and data streams. My role here was to guide, to interpret, to connect the microscopic with the digital. I knew what the weapon was, and I knew the impossible entry point. Now the Y had to tell me how it got the re. Reed, the lead specialist called out, her voice tight with focus. We've got something. Multiple login attempts deep within Thorne's home automation system. Subtly masked, almost like background noise, but you're the re. I leaned closer, my gaze fixed on the cascading lines of green text on a large monitor. How deep? Thorne's system was practically a fortress. Biometric, multi-factor, proprietary architecture. He designed it himself. Exactly. Not taking her eyes off the screen. The SC a raint brute force attacks. The SC a re-surgical, precise. Like someone knew the system intimately, knew where the back doors could be, even if Thorne himself didn't think he'd left to NY. She gestured to a timeline scrolling on a secondary display. See this cluster? About 48 hours before Thorne's death. A series of minute data packets disguised as routine system updates, pinging the environmental controls. HVAC, specifically. My mind immediately flashed back to the biosignature, the unique airborne agent I'd found. HVAC, I repeated, a cold knot forming in my stomach. They used the ventilation system. Looks like it. A male analyst chimed in, his voice raspy from hours of staring AT screens. They didn't just breach it. The Y prepared it. The C packets. The Y weren't just probing. They were installing something. A micro patch, maybe? Something that would allow for remote, untraceable command override. The implications were chilling. This wasn't a smash-a-and grab. This was a long game, a meticulously planned infiltration. The killer wasn't just technically proficient. The Y were patient, methodical, and profoundly dangerous. I imagined Thorne, oblivious in my supposedly impenetrable home, while invisible hands were already turning the gears of my demise. Can you reconstruct the sequence? Aya sked, my voice low. Show me the chain of events from the moment the Y gained control to the delivery of the agent. The lead specialist nodded, her fingers flying. On the main screen, a holographic representation of Thorne's smart home began to materialize, a translucent blueprint. Lines of data flowed, highlighting different sections. Okay, here we go. 48 hours out, installation of the override. Then, a dormant period. 24 hours before, a brief spike in power consumption in the ventilation unit. Almost imperceptible, probably running diagnostics on the IR newly acquired control. The night of. The blueprint of the house flickered, focusing on the master bedroom. At 0217, a complete override of the environmental sensors in the bedroom. Temperature, AIR quality, humidity, a spoof to optimal readings, even as the system was being manipulated. Simultaneously, the internal AIR purification system, Thorne's last line of defense against contaminants, was temporarily disabled. Not shut down completely, mind you, but bypassed. Made inert without triggering NY alarms. A&D the delivery? I pressed, my jaw tight. This was it. The digital manifestation of the physical evidence I'd found. Here, highlighting a specific vent in the bedroom ceiling on the holographic model. At 0221, a microburst of pressure from the HVAC system, precisely a IMED AT Thorne's sleeping position. Too brief to register as a draft, too controlled to trip a NY motion sensors. Just enough to deliver a NA airborne payload directly into the immediate breathing space. I stared at the glowing blueprint, a perfect digital reenactment of a silent, invisible murder. It was clinical, horrifyingly efficient. The genius of it was in its imperceptibility. No forced entry, no struggle, just a ghost in the machine. Can you trace the source of the initial login attempts? I asked. Her brow furrowed. That's the tricky part, Reed. It's highly obfuscated. Multiple layers of proxies, bounced through half a dozen countries, routed through compromised servers. But she zoomed in on a small, flickering data point. The RE's a pattern here. A unique cadence in the packet timing. A specific type of encryption handshake used in the initial breach. It's not a common off-the-shelf toolkit. It's bespoke. Bespoke? I sked, leaning forward, a spark igniting in my chest. This was the signature. Yes, like a digital fingerprint. Someone crafted this method, this specific sequence of commands, for this purpose. It's a signature read, a digital signature pointing to a skilled operative. Someone who doesn't just know how to hack systems, but how to engineer the IR-own vulnerabilities, the IR-own tools. The tension in the backroom, already thick, ratcheted up a know-the-R notch. We had found the weapon. We had found the method. Now we had a ghost, a digital phantom with a unique signature. The hunt for the engineer had truly begun. This wasn't just corporate espionage. This was an assassin who weaponized code. The Y had just left the IR mark. The hushed reverence of the auction house back room was a stark counterpoint to the raw data flickering across my secure tablet. Polished mahogany tables, draped in velvet, held antique vases in silver platters, awaiting the IR moment in the spotlight. The scent of old money, of beeswax and a jade paper, hung heavy in the air, a thick, almost cloying perfume. Through a partially open door, I could hear the rhythmic, modulated voice of the auctioneer, a low murmur of bids rising and falling like a tide. But my focus was elsewhere, on the digital landscape of Thorne's demise. We ran the proprietary code against known corporate signatures. The lead investigator, a sharp-faced woman with an unyielding gaze, stated, her voice barely a whisper, cutting through the distant drone of the auction. She pointed a slender finger at a section of the display, highlighting a complex algorithm. The unique biosignature, the one that defied conventional classification, it has a near-perfect match with a research project flagged by our intelligence division 2 years ago, a project belonging to the LRED Dynamics. the LRED Dynamics. The name hit me like a physical blow. Thorne's most aggressive competitor, a conglomerate infamous for its ruthless acquisition strategies and its own secretive cutting-edge bioengineering division. My mind immediately connected the dots. Thorne's groundbreaking neural interface technology, the very reason my smart home was deemed impenetrable, would be a goldmine for the the biosignature. It wasn't just a marker. It was a calling card, a digital fingerprint embedded in the very method of Thorne's assassination. They weren't just after my designs. The Y were after the means to replicate my success. Perhaps eliminate me as a variable. The LRED has been trying to poach Thorne's lead engineers for months, I mused, the puzzle pieces clicking into place with an unsettling precision. They wanted my tech. The Y couldn't buy it, couldn't steal it directly. The investigator nodded slowly. Precisely. But a direct corporate raid, even for the is a risky play. Too much scrutiny. A suicide is cleaner. And the weapon we found, I pressed, the one that mimicked a neural shutdown. It aligns with the LRED's known advancements in targeted bioacoustics, doesn't it? The implications were chilling. They weren't just a rival. The Y were a corporate predator, weaponizing scientific advancement for market dominance. This wasn't just about money. It was about power, a absolute and unchecked. That's where it gets complicated. A know-the-R colleague, a younger analyst, interjected, his eyes glued to a different screen, displaying a topographical map of Thorne's smart home. We found something else. A back door, not a digital one, not exactly. More like a architectural oversight, deliberately exploited. My brows furrowed. Thorne designed that place himself. He was meticulous. Every vent, every conduit, every panel was integrated into the security grid. An oversight is unlikely. Unless someone created the oversight, the analyst countered, zooming in on a specific section of the blueprint. A small A, most imperceptible surface, a CSS panel leading directly into the central control hub, masked by a decorative wall. This panel, it was a DED during the final construction phase, late-stage modifications. Who signed off on the M? The investigator pulled up a document, a construction manifest with a list of authorized personnel A and the IR respective sign-offs. Her finger traced down the page, stopping a TIA name that made my stomach clench. This individual was Thorne's chief structural engineer, his second in command on the smart home project. The AIR, once thick with the scent of beeswax, now felt charged with betrayal. A mole, an insider, someone Thorne trusted implicitly. The impossible entry point wasn't impossible ATAL. It was a secret passage, built by design, by someone on the inside. He disappeared 2 days after Thorne's death. The analyst adid, his voice low. Cleaned out his office, left no forwarding address. We had been trying to track him, but he vanished. My mind raced, connecting the two threads. A, the L-Red Dynamics, the ruthless competitor with the means to weaponize advanced biotechnology. AIND Thorne's chief structural engineer, the mole with the intimate knowledge of the smart home's deepest vulnerabilities. The narrative of Thorne's suicide had crumbled entirely. This was a meticulously orchestrated assassination, a corporate hit job, executed with surgical precision A&AN insider's touch. The stakes had just ratcheted up beyond a nigh thing I'd imagined. It wasn't just about justice for Thorne. It was about exposing a conspiracy that reached into the highest echelons of corporate power, a conspiracy willing to eliminate a nigh one who stood in its way. I end now, armed with the identity of the competitor A and the betrayal of the mole. I knew our hunt for the engineer, the assassin, had just found its true north. I looked up from the tablet, meeting the investigator's grave stare. The game had changed, and we were only just beginning to understand its rules. Velvet ropes lay coiled like dormant serpents beside ornate pedestals, awaiting the ear turn in the spotlight. Beyond the closed double doors, I could hear the muffled, rising murmur of the crowd, the pre-auction buzz that meant fortunes were about to shift. But my focus wasn't on the priceless artifacts or the impending spectacle. My mind was trapped in a digital labyrinth, replaying the A architect's impossible death. I leaned against a stack of meticulously cataloged ART books, the IR spines a blur of guilt A and Leah the R. The structural engineer, the A architect's most trusted confidant, had been the key. A mole, burrowing into the very foundations of the smart home, providing A the L-Red Dynamics with the blueprints for AN undetectable entry A and exit. It wasn't just corporate espionage. It was a NA assassination. Cloaked in technological wizardry, A&A manufactured suicide narrative. The unique biosignature I'd found, the weaponized bio-agent. It AL pointed to a killer who weaponized invisibility. The problem was, how do you catch a ghost? This killer left no fingerprints, no conventional trace. They operated in the digital shadows, the IR weapon a whisper, the IR escape a dissolution into the network. A direct pursuit was futile. The Y were always several steps ahead, the IR resources seemingly limitless, the IR reach extending into the highest echelons of corporate power. I needed to force the IR hand, to drag the M out of the digital E, the RA, and into the harsh light of reality. My gaze drifted to a framed painting leaning against the wall, its vibrant colors muted by a protective sheet. It was a landscape, deceptively tranquil, but I could almost sense the hidden depths, the currents beneath the surface. That was it. I couldn't hunt the M in the IR element. I had to create a new element, one where the IR anonymity, the IR greatest strength, became the IR most profound weakness. A plan began to coalesce, a audacious end fraught with peril. It involved a lie, a calculated deception designed not for the public, but for one specific audience: the killer. I needed to leak something, not the truth, but a fabricated truth that would sound just credible enough to ignite panic in the meticulously controlled world. A breakthrough. A forensic discovery so profound it would threaten to unmask the M. I pulled out my secure satellite phone, its cold metal a stark contrast to the plush surroundings. I scrolled through my contacts, settling on the name of a journalist I trusted implicitly. A woman known for her relentless pursuit of truth, and her ability to protect a source. She wouldn't publish a thing without verification, but he would listen. More importantly, he would create the necessary ripple. Read. Her voice was crisp, cutting through the muffled sounds of the auction house. To what do I owe the late-night call? I have something? I began, lowering my voice, acutely aware of the hushed reverence of the back room. Something big, regarding the Architect's case. I could almost hear her lean forward on the O-the-R end. Go on. We had made a significant breakthrough. My words measured, carefully chosen. Advanced spectral analysis of the residual biosignature has yielded unprecedented results. We is talking about a unique cellular marker, something entirely novel, which we believe can be traced back to its precise origin. A definitive individual identifier. It's a game changer. We is on the cusp of identifying not just the weaponized agent, but its designer. The person behind it. I paused, letting the fabricated weight of the revelation hang in the AIR. I had to make it sound plausible, hinting at cutting-edge science without diving into specifics that could be easily debunked. The unique cellular marker was vague enough, yet sounded scientifically precise. The precise origin, and individual identifier, were the hooks, the direct threat to the killer's anonymity. Are you saying you know who did it? She escaped, her voice hushed now, a tremor of excitement beneath the professional calm. Not yet, I admitted, sticking to the script. But we have a pathway. A specific genetic fingerprint, if you will, that points directly to the source. It's only a matter of time before we have a name. We're preparing to make an official announcement within the next 48 to 72 hours, pending final confirmation. This timeline was crucial. It gave the killer a window, a ticking clock. It would force the M to a CT, to EI the R try A and D silence me, or reveal the M selves in a NA attempt to discredit the findings. This is huge, Reed, she breathed a D. Can I quote you on this? Off the record for now, but a tease? Let the industry publications pick it up first. No direct attribution to me, not yet. Just sources close to the investigation, or forensic teams report unprecedented progress. The goal wasn't to solve the case through the press, but to use the press as a conduit, a megaphone for a carefully crafted lie. The killer, I reasoned, would be monitoring AL news related to the architect's death. They would see the leak, understand its implications, and recognize the threat to the IR meticulously constructed invisibility. Ending the call, I felt a knot of tension tighten in my gut. I had just painted a target on my back. The killer was ruthless, technologically sophisticated. A&D had already proven the IR willingness to eliminate a Naiwan who threatened the IR operation. By creating this false trail, I was essentially luring a predator, hoping to catch the M in the IR own trap. The risk was immense, but the A alternative, letting the M vanish without a trace, leaving the architect's death an unsolved mystery, was unacceptable. I had thrown the bait. Now I just had to wait for the ghost to bite. The AIR in the back room, once merely expectant, now felt charged with a different kind of electricity. A silent countdown to a confrontation I knew was inevitable. The AIR in the auction house back room before a record sale was thick with a peculiar blend of anticipation and hushed reverence. Outside, the main hall buzzed with the low thrum of a crowd, a symphony of murmurs, and the occasional sharp gavel tap. But here, behind the velvet ropes, and reinforced doors, a different kind of tension coiled. My gaze swept over the climate-controlled display cases, each housing a NARTI fact worth more than some small nations. My own heart, however, was not on the provenance of a rare manuscript, but on the precise timing of a very specific arrival. The fabricated leak, planted strategically in a niche online publication, was designed to draw out a predator, not merely inform a public. I had made sure the details were just tantalizing enough, just wrong enough, to provoke a reaction from the only mind that understood the true implications of Thorne's death. I watched the door, my posture outwardly relaxed, but every nerve ending stretched taut, anticipating the moment the trap would spring. A shadow fell across the polished floorboards. The security operative, a formidable presence I'd arranged, gave a subtle nod. My eyes met those of the executive, who had just stepped through the back entrance. He carried himself with the usual corporate swagger, a tailored suit, an expensive watch, but my eyes, despite the IR-practiced calm, held a flicker of something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or a predatory assessment. He wasn't here for the ART. Good evening, my voice cutting through the quiet, a deliberate ripple in the stillness. Fancy meeting you here of a L places? I'd have thought you'd be celebrating, not scouting rare acquisitions. The executive paused, a fractional hesitation before my practiced smile clicked into place. Reed. A pleasure as always. One must keep abreast of the market, even amidst unfortunate events. His gaze flickered to a distant display case containing a NAN-scient intricate compass. Though I confess, my interest tonight is more pragmatic. I heard a rumor of a private viewing, some new tech perhaps? Something Thorne might have been working on? I held my gaze. You saw the A article, didn't you? The one about the missing component of Thorne's smart home system? The one that suggested a flaw in my design? Raw the R, then a deliberate, targeted attack? The smile faltered. His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. A raw the R sensationalist piece, I thought. Hardly credible. Hardly credible unless you knew exactly what it was referring to, I countered, stepping closer, closing the distance between us. A piece of technology designed to deliver a unique biosignature, right into the heart of Thorne's supposedly impenetrable sanctuary. His jaw tightened. I have no idea what you're implying, Reed. Elias Thorne was a rival, yes, but I respected my genius. His death was a tragedy, a suicide. A suicide that left behind a microscopic trail no one else bowed the red to look for. I pressed, my voice low but firm. The impossible entry point, the unique biosignature. The why weren't accidental. They were the fingerprints of a system designed to exploit the very infrastructure Thorne had built for my own safety. A system that didn't breach my walls, but weaponized my sanctuary from within. I watched me, every subtle shift in my expression, every clench of my elegant hands. You wanted my designs, didn't you? His breakthroughs in bioadaptive materials, the ones that threatened to eclipse your own company's less innovative, more conventional solutions. The corporate sabotage wasn't enough, was it? You needed to eliminate the architect himself to fully control the narrative, to seize his intellectual property without resistance. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Control? Everyone wants control, Reed. Thorne was a visionary, but he was a LSO a fool. He wouldn't share. He wouldn't collaborate. He wanted to change the world, but only on my terms. The mask of corporate composure was finally cracking, revealing the sharp edges beneath. His technology, my genius, could have belonged to everyone under the right guidance. My guidance. So personal ambition, the N, letting the words hang in the A-ire. Not just corporate rivalry. You saw my death as your ascension, the ultimate hostile takeover. I saw an opportunity, he corrected, my voice hardening, a glint of genuine menace in my eyes. An opportunity to prevent a disruptive technology from falling into the wrong hands. Or, more accurately, to ensure it fell into mine. the advanced delivery system? I pushed, needing the full confession, the complete picture of my calculated malevolence. How did you manage it? The smart home's own ventilation? A micro-A aerosol emitter, integrated seamlessly, triggered remotely? He smirked, a chilling display of pride amidst his unraveling. Thorne trusted his systems implicitly. He designed the M to be self-regulating, self-maintaining. A few lines of code, a precisely engineered nanoparticle dispersal unit disguised as a NA air quality sensor. AAND, the system did the rest. It was, as you said, impossible to detect. The perfect weapon, invisible, untraceable, delivered by the very A-ear Hebrea the D. The executive's confession, a blend of arrogance and justification, filled the hushed back room. His words painted a vivid picture of meticulously planned murder, driven by a toxic cocktail of corporate greed, A, and personal, A, ambition. The trap had sprung. A and the architect of death, unmasked, stood before me. The rhythmic tap, 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 which had punctuated the executive's chilling admission, now resolved itself into the steady beat of a gavel on a polished block, a sound from the main floor of the building, signaling the imminent start of the record sale. It was a stark, almost absurd counterpoint to the gravity of what had just transpired in the hushed auction house back room before a record sale. The A-ear, thick with the scent of old money, and newer deceit, felt heavy. The executive, my face still holding a flicker of defiant pride, sat opposite me, flanked by two uniformed officers. His confession, delivered with a detached, almost academic precision, laid bare the intricate web of corporate espionage, the calculated elimination of Elias Thorne, and the weaponization of the very technology Thorne had pioneered. He spoke of the biosignature as a signature of his own genius, a microscopic key to an invisible murder weapon. He detailed how the impossible entry point was a brief, almost imperceptible fluctuation in the smart home's security, exploited by a device designed to mimic Thorne's own biometric data, a ghost in the machine. I watched the lead detective, a stoic woman with tired eyes, nod slowly as a junior officer meticulously transcribed every word. Her gaze met mine across the small, cluttered table, a silent acknowledgement of the monstrous ingenuity we had just faced. My mind, however, wasn't on the executive's cold narrative, but on the implications. This wasn't just a murder. It was a paradigm shift. "We have enough," the detective finally stated, her voice cutting through the tension. She gestured to the officers. "Take me." The executive offered no resistance, merely a disdainful smirk as he was led away. I felt a profound weariness, the kind that settles deep in the bones after witnessing the corruption of brilliance. "Retrieved," the colleague confirmed, adjusting his spectacles. From a secure location, the executive indicated. "It's being analyzed now, but initial findings suggest it's exactly as he described. A marvel of miniaturization and targeted biomimicry. The threat wasn't just contained in a person, it was contained in an object, a blueprint. The executive, for his arrogance, was merely the first to wield such a weapon. What if the R's had similar capabilities? What if the knowledge spread? I leaned back in my chair, the polished wood digging into my spine. The case of Elias Thorne had pushed me to the edge of what I knew, forcing me to confront an entirely new frontier of forensic science. My initial examination, focusing on traditional pathologies, had almost missed it. The microscopic anomalies, the unique biosignature. The Y were hints of a future where evidence might be invisible to the naked eye, where a killer could leave no trace a conventional autopsy could detect. The world was changing, and with it, the nature of crime. We were entering an era where innovation, once celebrated, could be twisted into the most insidious tools of destruction. Biometric hacking, targeted gene manipulation, weaponized nanotechnology. The SE weren't science fiction anymore. The Y were the new battlegrounds. And the victims wouldn't just be architects like Thorne, but potentially entire populations. I thought about the ethical dilemmas. How do we regulate innovation without stifling progress? How do we protect against technologies that can be weaponized at a microscopic level? The legal frameworks were years, if not decades, behind. Forensic science, my life's work, was suddenly facing an existential crisis. Our tools, our methodologies, our very understanding of evidence needed a radical overhaul. My gaze drifted to the window, where the city skyline was beginning to glow with the setting sun. The promise of a new day, but also the shadow of new threats. This case had been a brutal awakening. It wasn't just about catching a killer. It was about understanding the future of crime, and preparing for it. I knew I couldn't simply go back to routine cases, to conventional autopsies. My role, the role of forensics, had to evolve. We needed to be proactive, to anticipate the next technological leap, to develop countermeasures before the next executive, fueled by greed or malice, decided to weaponize the cutting edge. It was a reminder that life, even after such profound revelations, continued. The future of forensics wasn't just about solving the crimes of today. It was about safeguarding against the invisible threats of tomorrow. It was a daunting prospect, but a necessary one. I felt a renewed resolve, a determination to push the boundaries of what was possible, to ensure that the microscopic anomalies, the impossible entry points, would never again go unnoticed.